Hello, everyone. Welcome to our online viewers to this edition of Human Rights Heroes. My name is Samir Hussain, and I'm with the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor, also known as DRL. And within DRL, I'm in the Office of International Religious Freedom. Today, we're joined by our esteemed guest and friend, Mr. Daryl Davis. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful.
Excellent, excellent. So, just to jump right in, you're known as the black man who talks to the Klan. Your tagline is, "How can you hate me when you don't even know me?" You're a writer, documentary filmmaker, motivational speaker, race relations expert, renowned musician, and most importantly for us here at the State Department, you're a Foreign Service brat.
That's right.
And so I just want to say you're not just a human rights hero, you're a human rights superstar. So
thank you.
We're honored to have you here. Thank you for your incredible work, and we're also grateful to your parents for their service as well.
Thank you.
I wanted to say that. So I'd like to ask if you wanted to share some opening thoughts, and then we can just jump right into questions.
Well, sure. It all started for me, actually, really, with right here at the State Department. My father sent me overseas. The State Department sent him overseas. And, of course, my mom and I went along with him, and we served in many different countries in Europe and Africa. And I would attend international schools.
Right.
So, the American International School, my classes were filled with kids from Nigeria, Japan, Russia, Italy, Germany, France, Sweden. Anybody who had an embassy in those countries, all of their children went to the same school as I did. So, in the early 1960s, when I first went overseas, that's what I was surrounded with. Mm-hmm. That's all I knew. Was today, if you would look at that, you would say, that's multiculturalism. Well, that term did not exist back then.
Right.
To me, that was just the norm. But when I would come back home, here in my own country, the U.S., I was either going to all black schools or black and white schools, mm-hmm. depending upon whether they were newly integrated or still segregated. And there was not the amount of diversity in the classroom that I had overseas. Today, of course, you walk into a classroom, people are from all over. Mm-hmm. But that did not exist here in the 1960s. Right. So literally, when the State Department sent my family overseas, we were living 12 years into the future, mm-hmm. because that scenario had yet to come here. Right. And I was not prepared for racism or prejudice because I did not encounter it in my classroom. I grew up with everybody. So it hit me as a shock.
Right, absolutely. And I think it's definitely an important part of your story and your narrative. And along those lines, I was wondering if you could walk us through that day as 10-year-old Daryl Davis when you participated in the Boy Scout parade that is essentially a pivotal point in your life.
It was. Well, we had just returned from an overseas assignment, and my father brought us to Belmont, Massachusetts, mm-hmm. which is a suburb of Boston. I mean, I was 10 minutes by bicycle from Cambridge, from Harvard University. I used to ride past Harvard all the time. There was a Ben Franklin's 5 and dime store where I'd buy baseball cards. But I was one of 2 black kids in my entire school in 4th grade. I was age 10. And there was a little black girl in 2nd grade and myself in 4th grade. So most of my friends were 4th and 5th graders. They all were white. And a lot of my guy friends were members of the Cub Scouts, and they invited me to join, and I joined. And so a couple months later, after my being there was a parade that consisted of the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Cub Scouts, Brownies, 4-H Club, and some other organizations. And we were marching from Lexington, Massachusetts, to Concord to commemorate the ride of Paul Revere. And the streets were blocked off, and sidewalks were lined with nothing but white people waving flags and cheering us and yelling the British are coming and all that kind of thing. And my den mother let me carry the American flag. And as we're marching down, the street, somewhere down this parade route, I began getting hit from the right side by pebbles, rocks, soda pop bottles, cans, just debris from the street. And not everybody was doing this, just a small group of people over to my right, maybe 5, 6 people. I remember there being some kids, maybe my age, maybe a couple years older, and some adults who were throwing things. And having never experienced anything like this, my first thought was, oh, those people over there don't like the Scouts.
Yeah.
You know, I hadn't done anything, so obviously they can't be targeting me, right? And it wasn't until the troop leaders all came running towards me, and they huddled over me with their bodies, and these were white people, and they escorted me out of the danger. It was then that I realized I was the sole target, because nobody else was getting this special treatment. And I kept asking them, well, why are they throwing things at me? I didn't do anything. And they kept going, shh, move along. It'll be okay. So, you know, they never answered my question. When I returned home, my mother and father were cleaning me up. I was, you know, a little bit bloody, and asking me, how did you fall down and get all scraped up? I told them I didn't fall down. I told them what had happened. And for the first time in my life, they sat me down and explained to me what racism was. I had never heard the word racism, believe it or not. At the age of 10, I had no idea what they were talking about. No idea. And what they were saying did not even make sense to me. That somebody would want to hurt me, who doesn't even know me, never seen me before, never spoken to me, knows nothing about me, and they're going to throw things at me? Come on. You know, this can't be real. You're making this up. And the people that were doing this did not look any different to me than my white friends overseas, whether they were my little German friends, Italian friends, whatever, or my fellow Americans from the embassy, or for that matter, my white friends right here in Belmont, my classmates, or their parents. And they treated me rather well. So there had to be another reason why those people were doing this. It couldn't be because of the color of my skin.
Race, right?
I did not accept it. My parents had never lied to me before, but on this day in 1968, I truly believed that they were lying to me. I didn't believe them. And then about a little less than maybe a month and a half later, that same year, 1968, on April the 4th, Martin Luther King was assassinated. And every major city in this country, nearby Boston where we were living, right here, Washington, D.C., New York City, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Detroit, my hometown, Chicago, Los Angeles, they all burned to the ground with rioting, violence, fires, you know, all over race. It was then that I realized my parents had not lied to me. They told me the truth that there are people who simply do not like you for no other reason than the color of your skin. But I still didn't know why that was. So it was at that point that I formed a question in my mind at the age of 10, which was, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? And now I've been on a 50-year quest to find out the answer to that question.
Absolutely. It's an incredible journey, and obviously a very difficult conversation that day for any parent to have, and especially given what had just happened to you, you know, for the way that they handled it in a very calm and rational way to explain to you what the context was. But obviously as a young 10-year-old, probably more questions, you know, than answers, as you explained. I'd like to get back to that in a little bit, but if you were to fast forward to your meeting with Roger Kelly, if you could walk us through that a little bit in the motel room where you're having this meeting.
Okay, so fast forward there. I'm an adult now, and I have just about every book written on white supremacy, black supremacy, anti-Semitism, the Nazis, the KKK, neo-Nazis, trying to find that answer.
Yeah.
How can you hate me when you don't know me? And I could not find it. So I figured, well, you know what? Who better to ask that question of, to get an answer, than someone who would join an organization. And that organization, having had a history and a reputation for hating people who do not look like them and who do not believe as they believe.
Yeah.
Not to say that every member engages in that, but the organization itself, the Ku Klux Klan, has that reputation. So let me meet a Klan leader and sit him down and question him and say, how can you hate me? You don't even know me. And get my answer. So I decided to write a book and go around the country interviewing different Klan leaders up north, down south, where I live in Maryland, Midwest, you know, West, and get my answers and put them all in a book. So I contacted the head of the Klan for the state of Maryland. Started with him, and that was Roger Kelly. So my secretary actually contacted him for me, and he agreed to meet with me, not knowing that I was black, because I told her, do not tell him that I'm black unless he asks. I'd rather him meet me first, and then he can decide if he wants to talk to me or not. Well, we met, and he was very cordial. He did stay and talk with me, and I gleaned a lot of information from him. We became very, very good friends. I mean, there were plenty of points where we did not agree with each other, of course, but there are other things that upon which we did agree. But the point is that we sat and we talked, and we exchanged information. We got to know one another. Over time, he would come to my house. We would go out and eat together, or eat at my house. Mm-hmm. Later, he would invite me to his home. He would show me his Klan den, where he'd have his meetings. I would take pictures and notes from my book. He would invite me to Klan rallies. I would go to these Klan rallies, watch them light up the cross on fire. At the time, when I met him, he was a Grand Dragon, which means state leader. Later, he would be promoted to Imperial Wizard, which means national leader. Yep. And we became very, very good friends. And then over time, he began, I guess the whole time he was thinking about our exchanges. Yeah. And he began struggling with his own ideology. Uh-huh. Because, one of the things that I learned that's very important is this. While you are actively learning about someone else, at the same time, you are passively teaching them about you. Exactly. And so while I think I'm gleaning all this information from him, he's also gleaning information from me. And he's comparing it to what he thinks black people are supposed to be, uh-huh. or how he was raised to believe they were, or whatever. And it wasn't setting right with him. I did not fit what he believed. I would introduce him to some of my Jewish friends, some of my other black friends, some of my white friends who shared different values than he did. Yeah. And so I didn't realize it, but he was struggling with that. Yeah. And then over time, he changed. Right. And today I own his robe and hood, and I've gone around the country and collected many, many more from different people. Not everybody's going to change. Yeah. We know that. But I want to make a point. I never set out to convert anybody. Mm-hmm. That's not my mission. My mission is simply to find out the answer to my question. Right. And over time, they convert themselves. Right.
No, it's a powerful story and an approach. I know one of the lessons learned was this issue of respect. You'll have the difference in opinions with many people, but once you get to know them and you show kind of a deference to hearing them out, they start to respect you.
Exactly. And I have another theory is this. When two enemies are talking, regardless of how extreme they are, they're not fighting, they're talking. Right. They might be yelling and screaming and beating their fists on the table to make a point, but at least they're talking. Yeah. And it's when the conversation ceases that the ground becomes fertile for violence. So you always want to keep the conversation going, regardless of how much you may disagree with their point of view. Yeah. And always listen, because when you do listen, you reciprocate.
Okay. Absolutely. And so for the benefit of our audience, there's, 15-year-old Daryl Davis is all around the world watching us today, and they'll be able to access this video later. The work you do takes a lot of courage, takes a lot of patience, and you have to have a lot of tolerance for people who just vehemently disagree with you. What message do you have for young people who are struggling with some of these issues, that are being discriminated against, that are vulnerable? What would you say to empower them today?
What I would say is this. We have access to a lot of news media, social media, etc. And a lot of what we're seeing on there, unfortunately, is the wrong way to go about things. What I see is this. I see this person going on this television channel talking about that person over there. So then that person goes on another channel and talks about this person. Or they get on the same channel and either people are talking about each other, or they get on the same channel and they're talking at each other, or they're talking past each other. Be different. Don't engage in that behavior. Instead of talking about people, instead of talking at people, and instead of talking past people, let's start talking with people, regardless of how much you may disagree. Because if you allow somebody to present their platform, even if you don't agree with it, there is a great 98% chance that they will reciprocate and allow you to present your platform. You make sure that you present your platform in a factual, intelligent, and influential manner. Because at the end of the day, you each have to think about what the other person said and weigh it. But when you talk with each other, there's a greater chance that you'll get your message across.
Daryl Davis, human rights superstar.
Oh.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you,
really
I appreciate that.
Accidental
Courtesy is the name of the documentary.
Please
and,
check it out.
And Clandestine Relationships with a K is the name of the book.
Excellent. And for all of our viewers, thanks for joining today. We hope you'll join us next time as well. And please follow DRL on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you.
Thank you.